faith, firearms, and freedom. Welcome to Armed Lutheran Radio.
Welcome to Armed Lutheran Radio. I'm your host, Lloyd Bailey, the Armed Lutheran. Today's episode brought to you by Cook's Holsters, American-made custom Kydex holsters with a lifetime warranty and a 100% satisfaction guarantee. CooksHolsters.com. This is episode 9. Thank you for joining us. Today on the show, we've got another jam-packed episode. Tips for organizing your get-home bag or your car or range first aid kit. Sergeant Bill Silvia is back with tips for shooting transitions. A range review of the CZ 2075 RAMI, a new self-defense tip from Aaron Israel of Fundamental Defense, and Mike Epperson and David Broughton return to try to break the tie in the Great Armed Lutheran Gun Trivia Quiz for a chance to win a $50 Lucky Gunner gift card. All that straight ahead on Armed Lutheran Radio. Welcome back to Armed Lutheran Radio. Thought I would share with you a little something I figured out, a little something I learned at the range this weekend. You know, I talked a couple of weeks ago about having a get-home bag, and I had some thoughts about how to improve it and things you ought to add to it. Well, and talked about how I'd had an opportunity to actually put that into use, and I actually got a chance to do it again at the range this weekend, and learned another little lesson that I wanted to pass along. I was at the range working out, just practicing with my competition gear, and I just so happened to cut my finger. Nothing major, not exactly a stitches kind of thing, but definitely something I wanted to clean off and close up. Been running through some of my first ammo that I'd pressed, some of my hand loads, and was using cast lead bullets. Fingers were pretty dirty, and definitely didn't want to get that crud into the cut. So I went to the car and opened up the get-home bag. Inside my get-home bag, I keep a simple, basic first aid kit. Well, I struggled to find the things that I needed in my get-home bag. What I was looking for was some of those, antiseptic wipes. So I was going to clean off my finger before I put the Band-Aids on. And I couldn't find the antiseptic wipes. I dug around, I tore through it, and then I couldn't find the Band-Aids. So I ended up having to dump half of the thing out into my trunk just to find what I was looking for. And as I was cleaning everything up and putting the Band-Aid on, it occurred to me this is a good lesson for those of you who maybe haven't thought about it, and I obviously had not. You put together your get-home bag, and you put into that get-home bag a first aid kit, whether you build it yourself or whether it's one that's pre-built. You definitely want to make sure you do an inventory of all the things in your get-home bag and that you have some idea where everything is. You want to familiarize yourself with the layout of your first aid kit. You want to know how many of each thing that you've got, what they're used for, and where in that kit they're located, so that you don't have this situation where you're dumping everything out trying to find it when you really need it. Because imagine if this had been something worse. Maybe I'd actually cut a finger off or blown a finger off or was dealing with a minor flesh wound, something with with more substantial bleeding. Not being able to find the things that I need could be very costly. So here's some tips that I came up with that I'm putting into place as a result of this minor incident. First off, I'm going to make an inventory of all the items in my get-home bag, not just in the first aid kit, but in the get-home bag. I'm going to make a list, and in that list is going to be, I've already laid it all out. I'm listing all of the items that are in the get-home bag, and then where in the get-home bag that thing is located. And I'm going to then seal that in a gallon Ziploc bag so that it can't be damaged by spills or water or whatever. And then that's going to be prominent, right on top, either on the outside of the bag or right inside the bag when you first open it up. So that's the first thing that you find. Because think about this, maybe you commit to memory where everything in your get-home bag is, but what if somebody else needs to use it? What if your wife needs to use it? What if your kids need to use it? What if somebody else at the range needs to use it because you're unable to? Maybe you're the one that's hurt and they have to go get help for you. If they can't find anything because obviously they don't have the familiarity with the kit, it would be helpful to have a listing of exactly what you've got in the kit and where it's located. For example, in my kit, I'm using old book bags old backpacks that my son no longer uses, and they're great because they've got lots of zippered pockets and pouches and things to organize all your stuff. The problem is because you don't use it every day, you forget exactly how you organized it. So having that list will make it easier for you to quickly reference, the first aid kit is in the front zippered pocket. I've got X number of Band-Aids, I've got Quick Clot in this pocket, I've got a tourniquet over in that pocket, whatever. Make it really easy to find everything that I need so that if I've forgotten or if someone else needs to access the bag, they can easily figure out where everything is. The other thing that I thought about was doing a regular inventory of all the items that are in the bag. Making sure that those items are fresh and up to date, and that if you use them, you replace them. So, for example, the first thing I went to do was I've got a big tube, a bottle with antiseptic wipes in my kit. I use them, or I have used them in the past, after a range session to clean my hands, to de-lead my hands. I've used them to clean cuts and that sort of thing. But when I went to pull out some wipes this time, the bottle had apparently not held its seal, and all of the wipes were dry. So basically it was just a roll of paper towels. If I had done a regular inventory, I would have known that I needed to replace those. So making a regular inventory of your items, making a list of not only what you have in the bag, but how many of each thing you have in the bag, and how many you want to keep on hand so that okay, I want to have 4 of these, but I've only got 2. It's time to go out and get some replacements. For example, I keep 4 water bottles in my get-home bag, one for each of us. My family, we've got 4 people in the family. If we ever had a situation where we had to abandon the vehicle and walk, wanted to make sure each of us had our own water bottle. But the article that I wrote previously about using the get-home bag and what I learned about it, and what I spoke about a couple of weeks ago here on the podcast, I used a couple of those bottles of water after changing a tire when I returned to the airport after a trip back to North Carolina. So making an inventory, I would know, I had 4. 4 is the goal to keep in the bag. I only have 2 left. It's time to replace those 2. So doing a regular inventory and keeping not only a list of what you have in the bag, where those items are located, how many of them you are supposed to have, and then you can go back and check and see, all right, do I have these? And if I don't, then I need to go to the store and I need to replace them. So those are some little tips that I thought I would pass along based on just a little minor mishap that I had at the range over the weekend. Hope that's helpful to you, and talk to you next time.
Pistols, prayer, and potluck. You're listening to Armed Lutheran Radio.
Welcome back to Armed Lutheran Radio. Time now for another installment of the Great Armed Lutheran Gun Quiz. Last episode, David Broughton and Mike Epperson played to a tie, and they're back again this week for the tiebreaker. Introduce to you again our contestants, David Broughton from Raleigh, North Carolina, and Mike Epperson from your south. Where exactly in Texas? It's
well, if you want to be exact, we'll say Duncanville.
Duncanville. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you both for being here. Welcome.
It's good to be here. I've been boning up this past week on Lutheran trivia. Hopefully I can do better.
That's not fair, is it, David?
Did you read Moby Dick?
I have read it. It's a great book. Yeah.
Not fair. Okay. All right, so welcome to both of you. All right, here's just a reminder for everybody how it works. One at a time, you're both going to answer 5 trivia questions. You'll both get the same questions. The one who answers the most correctly wins. Normally, it would be a $25 Lucky Gunner gift card, but this time, because we're breaking last week's tie, it is a $50 gift card that's on the line. If you guys play to a tie again, we'll have you on again, and it will go to $75.
Sounds good.
All right. So the questions and the categories have been chosen at random, and here are this week's categories. They are general gun trivia, movie guns, gun geography, quotes from the founders, and your favorite, Lutheran trivia. So when we come back, David Broughton will be our first contestant on the Great Armed Lutheran Gun Quiz right after this.
Help support Armed Lutheran Radio. Visit www.patreon.com/armedlutheran and become a sponsor today.
All right, we are back with David Broughton, our first contestant on the Great Armed Lutheran Gun Quiz. We're going to break last week's tie. Ready to go, David?
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. Question number 1. The category is general gun trivia.
Okay.
What is the term used to identify the diameter of a shotgun bore?
That would be gauge.
Second question. The category is movie guns. Okay. What handgun does Sheriff Rick Grimes carry in the television series Walking Dead?
Is a caliber good enough, or do you want the actual?
I would prefer if you could do the brand at least.
I'm going to say it's a Colt 357.
All right. And
if I have to guess, I'm going to say a Python. If that's,
okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Question number 3, gun geography.
Okay.
This state is home to O.F. Mossberg & Sons, Colt Manufacturing, Stag Arms, and the National Shooting Sports Foundation.
I think they're over there in the communist part of the country. I think that's Connecticut.
All right.
Man, I'm tired of being right.
Fourth question, quotes from the founders. So you got to name the founder.
Okay.
All right. This is sort of like Name That Wacko in reverse. I ask, sir, what is the militia? It is the whole people. To disarm the people is the best and most effectual way to enslave them.
I'm gonna guess it's coming from. I'm gonna say Thomas Paine.
Okay. All right. And your favorite category, Lutheran trivia. What church abuse drove Martin Luther to write the 95 Theses and nail them to the door of the Wittenberg Castle Church in 1517? This was the act that launched the Reformation.
Yeah, that would be when the coin in the coffer rings, the soul out of purgatory springs. That would be indulgences.
All right. You did read Moby Dick.
I told you I've been boning up this week on it, Lloyd.
All right, very good. All right, so So when we come back, we're going to bring Mike back on, and we'll see how he does with these 5 questions, and then we will hopefully declare a winner.
All right.
When we come back here on Armed Lutheran Radio. All right, we are back, and Mike Epperson has rejoined us, and he's not heard any of the questions or the answers that David gave us earlier. And so let's see if we can declare a winner here. Are you ready?
I think so. Yes, sir.
All right, good. All right, question number 1. The category is general gun trivia. What is the term used to identify the diameter of a shotgun bore?
Gauge.
All right. Question number 2. The category is movie guns. What handgun does Sheriff Rick Grimes carry in the television series Walking Dead?
That was discussed just recently. It's a Python, I believe.
Okay. And question number 3. The category is gun geography. This state is home to O.F. Mossberg and Sons, Colt Manufacturing, Stag Arms, and the National Shooting Sports Foundation.
Oh, boy. Can you read the list one more time? I should know where Mossberg is.
Colt Manufacturing, Stag Arms, and the National Shooting Sports Foundation.
Okay, in Mossberg. I'm going to say Tennessee.
All right. And question number 4 is quotes from the founders, which, like I told David, this is sort of like Name That Wacko in reverse. I ask you, sir, what is the militia? It is the whole people. To disarm the people is the best and most effectual way to enslave them.
Certainly heard the quote. Now, if I could just put a name with it. I'm going to say Madison.
And finally, Lutheran trivia is the category. What church abuse drove Martin Luther to write the 95 Theses and to nail them to the door of the Wittenberg Castle Church in 1517, launching the Reformation?
The sale of indulgences?
All
ding,
right.
ding, ding! What do we have for
All right,
Johnny?
let's tally these things up. Let's see how everybody did. All right, the first question was the term used to identify the diameter of a shotgun bore. That is indeed gauge. You both got that right. So 1 apiece. Movie guns. The handgun used by Sheriff Rick Grimes on The Walking Dead is indeed the Colt Python 357 Magnum. So both of you correct on that one.
Wow.
Category number, question number 3, gun geography. The home state of Mossberg, Colt, Stag Arms, and the National Shooting Sports Foundation is Connecticut. And David got that one correct.
By the skin of my teeth.
By the skin of your teeth. You were almost, I think you were about to guess something else, and then at the last second, changed your mind.
Well, congratulations on that, David. Maybe I can catch up here on one of the last 2.
I think you will.
All right. Quotes from the founders. This was actually the famous quote from George Mason.
Nice.
And then finally, the Lutheran trivia quote. It was indeed Indulgences. You both got that one right, so apparently you have both been reading Moby Dick over the weekend. Very good. And our final score is David 4 and Mike 3. So by the skin of your teeth, thanks to Connecticut, the anti-gun communist state of Connecticut, David is our winner.
Oh, well, hey, thank you so much. And Mike, it was a lot of fun going up against you.
Well, I will feel the same thing. I'll reserve all my invective for after we hang up. Congratulations. Congratulations.
Well, hey, thank you.
Thank you both for playing, and congratulations, David. Great job for both of you, and I really appreciate you being the first guinea pigs on the show. And I think, David, I think your brother wants to challenge you for the next episode. I got an email from him suggesting that he wanted to take you on if you were able to move forward as the winner.
Yeah, so, I told him what I was doing tonight, and he was so excited. He said, "Man, I got to get on that show." So yeah, we're pretty competitive.
Okay. Well, we'll see if we can arrange that in a future episode. Good deal. Thank you both for playing. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And listen again next time for the Great Armed Lutheran Gun Trivia Show here on Armed Lutheran Radio.
Take care now. Bye-bye then.
Remember, Armed Lutheran Radio comes with a 100% satisfaction guarantee. If you are not completely satisfied, the next episode is free.
Welcome back to Armed Lutheran Radio. Time now for another Ballistic Minute with Sergeant Bill Silvia.
This is Ballistic Minute with Sergeant Bill. Today's topic, improving transitions. Now, transition is just after shooting one target, moving your eyes and gun to the next target before shooting it. Shooting is a vision thing. Your eyes lead the gun and your sights. You need to see the sights, even if it's just a very loose or floating sight picture. That sight picture doesn't have to be a hard, solid front sight where the sights are not moving and they're dead center on that target and you have equal light bars on either side of the front sight. Sometimes you just need to see enough to get a sight picture where you can have an acceptable shot, which is why they call it an acceptable sight picture. That acceptable sight picture is different for different shots, whether they're close or further away. You just need to practice those, see what you can do, how fast you can do them, even vary where your front sight is in your rear notch so you can see how much misalignment you can use and still get effective hits. Okay, for small transitions, a short distance between one target to the next, your eyes need to move first. Your hands are going to go to that focus spot where your eyes are focused on the next target. And as you're moving it, you need to prep the trigger so you're ready to fire as soon as the sights come into view. On bigger transitions, you really need to kind of pull the gun in, break in your elbows so that you can move faster. This will prevent you from over-transitioning like a tank turret with your arms out in front of you and your gun goes past where you want them to. You can also, on these bigger transitions, use your hips and legs, your lower body, to move the gun. This will make it smoother and it'll be able to pop to the next target a lot very quick and steadily. A Blake drill is a drill you can use to improve your transitions. A Blake drill, you start out at a set distance, we'll say 3 yards. Your targets are maybe a foot apart and you have 3 of them. You will draw and fire 2 shots on each target. The goal of a Blake drill is to try to make your shot splits and your transitions the same speed. So you draw, pop, 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 pop. They're nice and even. It's not trying to set record times, you're just trying to get a nice cadence. The more you shoot that drill, the more you can increase that cadence, speed it up, and you can see how fast you can do your splits and your transitions. The goal is to have your split times and your transitions to be very close, especially when your targets are very close. Now this moves on to the next thing. You can back up and do further distances away, And you can also move your target distance out so that the transition distance between your targets becomes more. So say you move back to 10 yards and you put 3 yards between each target. That's going to make your transitions take longer, your splits will be faster, but on this Blake drill, you're trying to do it all smoothly. The last transition that most shooters don't realize is a transition would be an up and down transition like a Mozambique or a 2 to the body, 1 to the head drill. That's just an up transition. You're shooting 2 to the body and then transitioning up to shoot 1 in the head. You can start that just like a Blake drill, and you can fire all 3 shots to where they're the same tempo. Pop, pop, pop. And then you can speed it up and keep that tempo, and you'll see how fast you can really get those Mozambiques. Your transitions will get shorter and shorter. The last version of this is where on some competitions they will put targets stacked on top of each other. And most of the time they'll put a target on top of each other and then another target right next to it with a target on top of it. So you'll have 4 targets just stacked up in twos. Always remember to start at the bottom target and transition up. Go back to the next bottom target and transition up. If you try to transition down because your hands and gun are in the way, you cannot see to where your next target is, so you can't transition to where you're seeing. You're transitioning blindly. Now, most transition drills are done in live fire, but you can also do them in dry fire. If you get a metronome or a metronome app for your phone, you can use that to kind of simulate the times, and you can practice by just manipulating the trigger and doing your transition from target to target to target. You can even increase this Blake drill from a 3-target drill to a 2-target drill and put them as far as almost 180 degrees apart. This has been your Ballistic Minute with Sergeant Bill.
So, you have your concealed carry permit or license to carry. Now what? Now you need a good holster. Not one of those cheap neoprene prophylactic holsters you can find in the big box stores. You need a holster custom built for the firearm you intend to carry every day. Check out CooksHolsters.com. Made in the USA, Cooks holsters are available in a wide range of colors and designs for inside the waistband or outside the waistband carry. They offer a limited warranty against defects and a 100% satisfaction guarantee. Visit www.cooksholsters.com and use the promo code ARMEDPODCAST and take 15% off everything in the store. You put in the time and effort to legally carry a firearm for personal protection. Protect your firearm with a custom holster. Choose CooksHolsters.com.
All right, we're out here at the range. So what I thought I would do is do a range review of the CZ 2075 RAMI. I wrote a piece on the blog about an issue that I had with the magazines, and I'm going to show you that or explain that to you here in just a few once I get a couple of magazines loaded up. The 2075 RAMI is a compact steel-framed CZ75 style gun. That is, it's single double. In this case, it's a single action, double action, 10 round magazine standard. With it also comes with a CZ75 compact 14 round magazine with a plastic sleeve that creates an extension, a finger extension. So you can carry a spare with 4 extra rounds. Magazines for this sucker are expensive, and as far as I can tell, there are no aftermarkets. So if you can find a Mech-Gar, however, 14 round CZ75 compact mags, those will work. You could carry a CZ75 mag as a spare. They function perfectly. The gun is a single action, double action with a decocker. As I said, standard 10 round flush fit magazine with a little bit of a lip. You can get about 2.5 fingers grip on it. It's comfortable in the hand. It's fairly weighty, and I'll post the specs on it in the show notes. Comes standard with True Dot night sights, which is a nice feature. This is the steel framed version of the gun. There, as I understand it, the original runs several years back, they released with a polymer frame, and that polymer frame turned out to be kind of a problem. It would bulge. They had some problems with frames bulging, and so they stopped producing it and went to an all steel frame. It's available in 9mm and 40 Smith & Wesson. I'm running 115 grain target ammo today, kinetic range ammo from Block Tactical, and it is a comfortable shooter. It is roughly, size-wise, in terms of thickness, it's a fairly thick gun. It is actually, to be honest, if you hold it right next to the full-size CZ75, it's actually a little bit thicker than the CZ75. But if you're familiar with the CZ75, picture a CZ75, where the dust cover ends. Basically cut the gun off at the dust cover, and that's about the length of the 2075 RAMI, and then cut about 1.5 inches of the grip off. It's got a very comfortable first trigger pull is very smooth, and that single action pull is very, very crisp. It's a very nice shooter. The weight really helps mitigate the recoil. Think of it, I'm trying to think, size-wise, probably comparable. If you're not familiar with CZs, if you're not a CZ aficionado, then it's probably comparable size-wise to, say, a Glock 26. And it's probably just as, but it's a little bit heavier because of the steel frame. And it is not striker fired. It is a hammer fired gun with a decocker. Single action, double action. There is an issue though. I don't know whether you can hear that. Quick, tell me, is that a Sky CPX2 magazine? Or is that a CZ75 RAMI magazine? It's a CZ75 RAMI magazine. And this is a nearly $700 gun, and the magazines rattle as much as my truck gun, my Sky CPX2. I was really surprised at that and disappointed. Every single one of the RAMI magazines, except for the compact, does that when they are filled to capacity. Now, as a result, the gun rattles. So I'm going to load this. Hear that? That's the gun rattling. That's the gun with 1 in the chamber and 9 still rattling with 9 in the magazine. That's a little disconcerting, I think. I sent a yep, see, that's 10 rounds in the mag. And like I said, these are like $45 magazines, and they rattle like this. I sent an email to CZ USA and told them about this, and I said, "What's the deal here?" And the response I got surprised me. The response I got basically said, "Hey, it's supposed to do that. Other gun brands have magazines that rattle, so it's just a function of the manufacturing. It's normal." Which I think is bull. If you spend $600 for a handgun, it shouldn't rattle like this. right? The gun doesn't rattle, the magazine does. Now I'm going to put the magazine back in the gun. That's the gun rattling. Well, it's the magazine rattling inside the gun. All right. Which I think is ridiculous, and CZ seemed to think was perfectly normal. But anyway, and I'll include that email in my notes, in the show notes. So we're gonna see how this goes. Okay, put another magazine in. Recoil is very manageable. Magazines drop free. They're easily reinserted. Now I don't know. No, the mag well is not beveled. The back strap comes down just a touch. Oh, I'd say 1/4 of an inch. And it has a bit of a slope, so it makes it a little easier. So when you're inserting the magazine, a spare, and you hit it, you don't hit it just right, it still slides right in. Follow-up shots are pretty easy to acquire, not bad recoil, and the trigger is just excellent. Trigger is fantastic on this gun. Really like it. This is the 14-round magazine. I'm going to decock this and shoot it from half cock. When you decock it, it doesn't drop the hammer all the way. It drops it to half cock. We're going to see what this feels like. Very smooth. Decock it again. Very easy to decock. The decocking lever is easy to manipulate with your thumb. It's not real, doesn't protrude a great deal, so it doesn't really get in your way or hurt, hit you when it's recoiling. As I've mentioned in previous episodes, I have an issue with riding my thumb on slide locks, and CZs are great for this because I don't have that problem. Even with this smaller gun, the slide lock is safely away from my thumb, and I don't have to worry about locking it back. It's a lot easier to control even. With the 14-round magazine and the finger extension, it's a lot easier to control. You get the full grip with your third finger all the way around. You got nothing, your finger's not hanging off of it, so it's a nice grip with that 14-rounder. It drops free. Well, not quite. And the reason it doesn't quite drop free, you have to kind of manipulate it a bit, change your grip a bit, is because that the sleeve that goes on the bottom of the magazine kind of protrudes a little from the back, and that rubs up against the palm of your hand, which causes it to stick a little bit. So it doesn't always drop free every time, and that's not a function of the magazine itself so much as it is a function of just sort of the way the magazine bumps against you. You have to kind of tilt your hand a little bit to get that third finger off of the magazine, away from the gun, and then the magazine slides out free. It has nice checkered rubber grips on either side, and I understand there are some aftermarket grips for it. There are aftermarket sights, but I don't know why on earth you would want to change them. These True Dot night sights are excellent. They're fairly low profile, sloped so they don't snag. Really nice sights. I understand there are two versions of this gun. One has the decocker and one does not. If I was going to carry this every day, and this is intended to be a carry gun, I like the decocker. It is a little bulky, and that's my main beef with it. But actually, the bulk and the heft makes it very controllable in recoil. plus the standard CZ design with the inside the frame instead of on the outside of the frame really help, and full length all the way from the back of the frame to the end of the dust cover helps maintain contact between the slide and the frame all the way through recoil, so you get a nice smooth recoil impulse. It really feels good. My big concern, though, and it's still the biggest issue, two things. Finding holsters is a little bit of a challenge, and then there's the other issue is the rattling magazines. I just don't know why this is an issue with a nearly $700 gun. The performance is flawless. Let me make this one point clear. The rattling doesn't affect the performance of the magazines as far as I can tell so far. I have had no issues whatsoever. Let me take that back. The first time I brought it to the range, it was a Jam-O-Matic. It would not feed. It was just problem over and over and over again. Maybe 100 rounds through it with that issue of it just kind of giving me a little bit of a problem. I took it home, I tore it down, and I cleaned it, lubed it thoroughly, and I've never had an issue with it since. I don't know whether this is really an issue. I just don't like the fact that I've got a gun that rattles. It sounds cheap. When you got a $200 truck gun that does this, and then a $600 CZ that does it, that really irks me. But other than that, I've been very happy with it. And if any of you know any way to eliminate this rattling, I would love to hear it. If any of you have similar issues, or if you've resolved them, please let me know. Send us an email at armedlutheranradio@gmail.com. Love to hear what your experiences have been. All right, that's it from the range. Thanks for listening.
Faith, firearms, freedom. This is Armed Lutheran Radio.
And welcome back. It's time now for a self-defense tip from Aaron Israel of Fundamental Defense.
Hey folks, this is Aaron Israel with Fundamental Defense with your personal defense tip of the week. This week I want to talk to you about making good use of your limited resources as it relates to developing relevant skills for personal defense. All of us have a limited amount of time and money with which to seek out professional training and then practice the skills that we learn in class on our own time. As such, we should make sure that we are allocating our time and resources wisely so that we don't waste any time on extraneous things that aren't likely to help us in our quest to be prepared for personal defense. A good guide for developing a training and practice budget is what I call the plausibility principle. The plausibility principle states that we should spend most of our time and money training and practicing skills that are relevant to what is most likely to happen to us in our daily lives as it relates to personal defense. These skills are going to vary somewhat depending on your occupation, but for the average armed citizen, the most probable situations where we might need to use deadly force in self-defense are somewhat predictable. Research from Tom Givens of Rangemaster out in Tennessee of over 60 civilian defensive shootings finds that on average, defensive shootings occur at the 10 to 15 foot range and require a rapid multiple shot string of fire. The data on officer-involved shooting from the FBI also correlates pretty well with these findings. That's a great place to start when you think about what your goal should be as a defensive shooter. You should develop the skills necessary to deliver an accurate, rapid, multiple-shot string of fire to a high-centered chest-size upper thoracic cavity target at 10 to 15 feet as a good starting point. Once you master the fundamentals that are required to be able to do that based on this most probable scenario, you can start working on shooting problems that require more precision and longer distances as you move outside what is most probable into what is still very plausible, such as shooting in defense of others, responding to a spree killer or quote-unquote active shooter, etc. You may also consider learning how to shoot in and around your vehicle, as you likely spend a lot of time in and out of those as well. Some other things to think about when you budget your training and practice resources would be unarmed skills such as grappling, medical skills such as how to put on a tourniquet and how to do CPR, and think about how much more likely you are to need to render aid to someone who's injured, like after a car accident or something like that on one of these busy highways in Texas. You're much more likely to need to apply medical skills than you are to ever need to shoot somebody. So if medical skills aren't on your training budget, then you're really making a mistake. So think about how much more likely you are to need that, and that would definitely fall into the probable category for most, if not all, people. So don't neglect medical skills just because you're a gun guy. As you develop a better grasp of fundamental skills, you can expand into other plausible areas that may require more advanced pistol handling, ground fighting, medical skills, maybe take a carbine class, maybe take a shotgun class, some of those types of things. However, you got to be careful not to get too ridiculous with your training and practice resources by pushing out into what in fact may be possible to happen, but is not actually plausible. For instance, it's certainly possible that the Russians could invade tomorrow, forcing you to gather a group of your high school buddies together and form a resistance group to take back your town, if that sounds familiar to some of you who watch movies. But that probably isn't something you want to dedicate a lot of training resources to. At that point, you would really be entering into what I call fantasy camp land. If you aren't a Navy SEAL, you shouldn't concern yourself with learning the things that only benefit Navy SEALs, doing their jobs, kicking in doors around the world. You're not going to be kicking in doors around the world, so you don't really need to know how to get on a four-man stack and clear a building. That's not something that's relevant to personal defense. Now, if you want to take that sort of class for the fun of it, there's certainly nothing wrong with that, but you really aren't training at that point. You shouldn't kid yourself and say that you're doing that because you want to be prepared for what's most likely to happen to you. At that point, you're just having a good time with your buddies, and there's something to be said for that, but it's really just a fantasy camp, just like going to hang out with Mick Jagger and learn how to do a guitar solo. You're not going to be a rock star, and you're not going to be a Navy SEAL at this point if you aren't already one. So I would encourage you to use the plausibility principle to assess your daily lifestyle, take a look at what skills make the most sense for you to develop, and then allocate your training and practice resources appropriately. That's your personal defense tip for this week. You can check us out on the web at fundamentaldefense.com, and I'll catch y'all next time. Thanks for tuning in.
And that's going to wrap it up for this episode. Thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading and subscribing. I hope you'll join us again next time for another episode of Armed Lutheran Radio.
For show notes, be sure to visit our website at www.armedlutheran.com. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @ArmedLutheran and like us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/TheArmedLutheran. You can contact us by email at armedlutheranradio@gmail.com or leave us a voicemail at 855-54-ARMED. Thank you for listening to Armed Lutheran Radio.